I should have did more reading podcast. Tom Shattuck here with my friend Jay. Michael Graham has joined us. If you haven't noticed,
Who?
I'm keeping some stuff. I'm keeping some of that stuff in.
Michael who?
Michael Graham. You can get him on Twitter at
Michael Graham.
Christ.
How many times have you heard that,
Yeah,
Chad?
I love it every
Not
time.
nearly
I love
enough.
it. I've
No
always
kidding.
loved it. And
you know what I love too is that like I'll do stuff
How's
and,
the hijacking
and
begun?
there'll be some people in the crowd who go, do it because I want to hear Michael. So I'll go up and Michael Graham.
Yeah.
And like 93% of the room's going, why is he yelling at us? We have
Yeah.
who the hell is that
Why is
asshole?
he shouting his name?
Oh, I'm sorry. Can
Well,
we not do profanity on
You
this?
can, it doesn't matter. Yes, you
Doesn't
can.
matter.
Yes,
I
you can.
apologize.
Well,
I don't
the-
normally use
the
profanity,
reason-
as Shattuck will tell you. Only I'm inspired on occasion.
That's incorrect. I've heard you.
Only on a very rare occasion
You
will I take
don't-
salty
well,
language.
No,
I'm
But I
really,
just heard
I'm really
you.
painting
Wait,
a
this is-
palette. I remember back in
Hold on, you can get him
2007.
at, I am at michaelgraham.com. Michaelgraham.com. Go ahead.
Just Michael
2007.
Graham. I remember 2007. No, I don't know. I'm just wanting to do a Tom Shattuck affectation. That's all.
1996. That's what the
Yes.
2000s kind of wiped me out.
You know, I
but
almost live in Winchester now. It's very scary.
You're not Winchester
I'm
material.
almost in
No.
Winchester. When
You're
I
not.
walk out my back door and go in the woods, I'm in Winchester.
But it's
I
Woburn.
know.
And you know what's funny is so I keep asking people. So is Tom Shattuck, top graduates, whatever,
No one
valedictorian.
So
no
it's-
one knows the name.
so-
Nothing. I did have a cop one time go, "Which Shattuck?"
Yeah.
and then he wasn't interested in Tom.
I was
so,
visited in my home
Yeah.
as recently probably as 1989.
Look,
maybe
dude, if
1990.
this were now, you'd be the guy that they were putting in custody because what happened in Parkland. That's who you
no
are.
way. No
That's
way.
who you are. They'd
No.
be sitting on you right now.
No, that guy supposedly had friends in the school. I didn't have any friends in the school. So listen.
Are you going to do your typical brown nosing the cops thing? Are we going to have to do this whole?
No,
the
this
police
is not
are always
issues oriented.
right.
This is about
We're not?
you.
Okay.
If you haven't known by
Me?
now, this is Michael Graham, by the way. This feral.
I am the least interesting
rabid
topic
animal.
in the room.
Okay.
Right, Jay?
We'll see. We'll see.
So So this is what I like to say about you. People know you. You're a talk radio host. You're on TV. You've got a
Blah, blah, blah.
podcast. Yeah, all that crap. You do a lot of mediocre things. That's
Exactly.
fine. But so what I want to get at is one of the things, the way I describe you is that you seem to do whatever you can. You've got 83 projects at any given time, including selling stuff, including marketing, yada, yada. And you're always looking for more stuff. It seems to me that you do whatever you can and work the equivalent of 7 jobs to not have to work.
I do not want to work for a living. I hate working for a living, so I work my butt off to make sure that I never have a job. I recently had a job. I spent a year working for the company that owns the Weekly Standard and the Washington Examiner. They had some media issues, and so I came in and and it was a disaster. It was a total disaster. I mean, they were sweet people, and I think they liked me, whatever. But it was very evident soon that
So
this
why not?
whole box. I don't know. I don't.
Have you ever had a...
Have I ever had a real job? Okay.
So you grew up in the swamps of South Carolina.
I can answer this question very easily. The last time I worked for a living was when I cropped tobacco as a kid in South Carolina.
Oh, no
my
kidding.
dad would ship me off to my Uncle Bobby's farm in Red Springs, North Carolina, and we would get up before daylight because it was his farm.
Yeah.
And we would drive out and pick up all the other day workers who were all other kids, 12 to 17 years old. 100 degrees, 80% humidity, cropping tobacco until it was dark. And I did that 6 days a week. And the only lesson I learned from it, other than don't ever say anything snarky about someone bigger than you, was I did not want to work for a living.
Right.
And so I've determined ever since then not to do that. My last, what I would call real job was right out of college. I spent 3 months working for a rental car company, and that was a disaster.
As the line level,
Right.
sir, let
Do
me
you
show you
remember-
the mid-size.
Okay,
Can I
do you-
upgrade
pick you
you?
up?
Okay, so people forget this. The enterprise model now of people coming to pick you up and stuff, whatever, they take that for granted. But there was a day when that was the cutting edge tech, and there were these companies, one of them was called Agency Rent-A-Car, where they would drive to your house in your car with the paperwork and a machine, clunk, 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 credit card machine, and they had a tow car on the back, and then the guy would unassemble the tow car and put the stuff and drive the car away and go pick up another car. I did that. For 3 months.
So this is...
I am one of the worst drivers in America. I was straight out of college, so I didn't have a lot of driving experience anyway. And I'm driving with another car behind me, swerving down the roads of Tulsa, Oklahoma. And it was the dumbest. Why they let me do this, I have no idea. How I survived it, how there was never a wreck, I have no idea. But
You then moved on to Domino's, and you had to deliver a pizza within 30 minutes.
Exactly. But that's when I was doing stand-up as a amateur.
Hold on. on. That's where we ahead of ourselves. So you grew up in South Carolina. Your
Grew up in
dad
South
was a
Carolina.
TV repairman.
That's right.
Mom was a homemaker.
No, she worked. She worked as a secretary kind of thing, whatever. She worked for the state of South Carolina as a secretary for $75 a week.
Oh, wow.
And that's not because I'm so old. That's because South Carolina was so cheap.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, I was the latchkey kid. I literally had like the little, because I was so dumb and I would lose things. Like I would lose clothes while I was wearing them. I would like, where did my sock go? It was on my foot. So my dad had one of those clippy things that you clip to your belt with the keys on, so that no matter what, I could not lose my keys. Still lost them 7
That's the
times.
exact definition.
Exactly. I was a latchkey kid. I have a younger sister, 2 years, and there's just the two of us. And
What kind of neighborhood was it?
It was rural. It was rural. When people think of the rural South, they think of like on TV, like the farm is in the middle of nowhere kind of thing. It was nothing that classy.
Yeah.
It was a crappy development, like a strip development in the middle of nowhere that went bankrupt while they were building the house. So, for example, we lived next door to the tennis court. Well, the tennis court was a big sand hole that the bulldozer had dug out, and then the guy went bankrupt. But what was weird is everybody knew it as a tennis court because all of our parents had it pitched to us as the tennis court. So we would say to people, "Let's go." So people would say, "Let's go play at the tennis court," and you'd have friends like my cousins would be like, "When we get there, what tennis
your
court?
racket?"
They have the rackets. Like, no, it's just a big sand pit. But we had the best time because it looked like a sci-fi landscape because it was dug. Like it was like a cliff kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? Like it was dug into the side of this thing. So you'd climb up kind of the clay, sand stuff. Yeah. And so we played every Star Trek, Star Wars kind of, it was absolutely great. It was
and
wonderful.
where was it? Was this Western South Carolina?
It was near Columbia, or in the middle. It was in the worst part, the crappiest part. As General Sherman allegedly said of Columbia, South Carolina, the only thing between Columbia and hell was a screen door.
not worth burning.
Exactly. And I don't think the door was latched, actually. I think you go right through.
But it was a happy childhood friend.
Yeah, it's fine.
Playing the normal American, yada yada.
I mean, you know me. I suck, at people and everything, and I was obnoxious. I was born in L.A. My mom is from Long Beach, California.
Yeah, but your parents aren't obnoxious.
My parents are wonderful. My mom is from Long Beach, California. My dad is from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. So I'm bi-coastal. Except you can't tell people in rural South Carolina that you're bi-coastal because they think
might kill you.
They date guys on the beach. Yeah. So I never fit in, as my dad said. Are you from the South? But it just didn't take. And I wrote a whole book about that. Your resignation. I never fit. I was like this. I was totally. It would be like taking Shattuck and going to Louisiana and saying, "Hi, you're gonna live here with the Cajuns. Good luck. We'll be back in 10 years to see how that works out."
So did you feel like that you were more sophisticated than a lot of
I don't
people?
know. I just knew I was just always off. It was like always like one step off. I didn't know what the word sophisticated, like that had no relationship to me. My mom, totally blue collar. My dad, totally blue collar. I was the first person in my family to go to college. It wasn't sophistication. It was just I knew I wasn't like these people. I mean, it's the reason why I hate country music. Country music is the soundtrack of me getting my ass kicked by, guys.
That's why I like country music.
Exactly.
It's the soundtrack of you getting your ass kicked.
Yeah, I actually had. I tell people this and they don't believe me, but I actually had a fight in school, not a fist fight, but like a yelly fight kind of thing, where I was called an N lover. I mean, that's where I grew up, is people who use the phrase N lover. David Duke got the highest percentage of votes in my town of any place outside of Louisiana when he ran for president in 1992.
That says it all right there.
Yeah, I mean that's just. I mean, so it was just. I mean, there was those people. So my life wasn't really my town or my school. My life was church. My parents went to church 4 or 5 times a week. Very evolved, evangelical. Every church had a teen group, and every year did. And we'd go to Six Flags and all that stuff. And so that was my social life, and that was also my education as a comedian and a talk host, was watching people in the pulpit. Because people don't go to church, don't get this. Particularly, well, let's put it this way. If you go to Catholic church, you don't get it because the priests suck at the homily. They don't. That's like their least important thing, So they stand there, kind of mumble,
long and boring.
Yeah,
cultish.
But in the evangelical side, this is the tradition of the great preachers going back to Cotton Mather, who would write these barnstorming sermons that would get published and passed around. They were entertaining. Yeah, I had preachers and evangelists who'd come through town, and they did a combination of stand-up comedy and argument and talk radio. They would use topics of the day. They would say, the Lord, wants you to do this, and look at what's happening over here. And they would do a Rush Limbaugh style riff on the thing. And of course, they would relate it back to their faith tradition, the faith argument. But I spent my formative years having arguments shoved into my head over and over and over again. Classic, I mean argument not in the debate sense, but in the classic logic sense of this is what an argument looks like. You state a thesis, you provide evidence, you go to the text, you draw from your life, you blah, blah, blah. And so that was when I started doing talk radio by accident, it was easy. It was in my wheelhouse.
And you went to Carolina?
No, I did not go to South Carolina, even though I'm wearing this shirt right now. I went to Oral Roberts University in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I have a degree in fundraising, so please laugh, because if you don't, God's going to take me. And it was...
what is your degree in? Is it
English literature.
Okay.
I was a music major when I went.
Were you a well-read kid? Did you enjoy reading?
I mean, once again, well-read compared to what? I mean, I meet people who have a really good education all the time, and I feel very intimidated.
But were you a bookworm?
I was a total bookworm. I lived in books all the time, but I also went to a place like where they didn't have a lot of books. Like I read the books in our house. Like I read not Treasure Island. Swiss Family Robinson like 7 times, because it was one of the 9 books that we had. You know? So I just kept rereading it. My parents are great people, but like, for example, my dad was a classic redneck Southerner who will tell you that before he became a born-again Christian, before he had a conversion experience, he had read maybe 3 books in his whole life.
Right.
Wow.
But then he felt the need, like, I need to know more about so he started reading biblical books and books about faith. Well, then that's led him into biographies of like famous people. And then he started getting interested in history. Right. And so now my dad is always either reading or listening to a book on tape. Well, I missed, by the time that got around, I was already, headed out. So I just didn't have a lot of academic input. I went to a horrible public school where they offered the minimum classes. I actually taught my high school geometry class. I actually taught it.
You did?
Yeah, I was, and I suck. I mean, math is like my worst subject, but they just didn't care enough. So the vice principal would come on the speaker, Michael, do the next section.
No kidding.
Yeah.
It
was just crap. Yeah, it was just crap.
So were you a talk radio fan at this point?
Didn't know what talk radio was.
Probably a lot of religious talks seeping in and out of the AM.
Actually, no, it was really cool. We had this Christian college in Columbia, South Carolina, and they had a station, and they played what eventually became contemporary Christian music. And so as a kid, I was into that somewhat, in second chapter of Acts and Amy Grant before Amy Grant, stuff like this. And that night, they had this guy who would play classical and instrumental Christian music. And it was, I didn't know, it was these groups that take like a classic hymn, stand up sniffers, and they would do like a big band style or a combo style arrangement. So, and the guy, by sheer coincidence, was a trombone player. The host of it was. And I played trombone in high school and in college. And so at night, I remember laying in bed and listening to this. It was going, wow, this music is just, it's one of the lessons that I tried to learn early on, and that was a problem. And if you've ever watched a Christian movie, every once in a while they'll put out a movie with, who's that lame actor that
Cameron?
Cameron, what's his name?
Yeah, I like those movies.
They're not very good as movies. They're trying to make a point.
Yeah, right.
This guy's whole message was, hey, relax. If you like really good music played by talented musicians, this is just good. My band director in high school was a pro jazz player, and he knew he knew Oscar Peterson, he knew Herbie Green, he knew Charlie Parker's sideman. He came to our high school one time. It was amazing. And he found this station because of me. And he's like, man, I was listening to that last night, man. That's really good music. And he would do arrangements for me to play stuff in church that was all about the music. And that's when I kind of got the message of just be good at what you do. And then whatever you believe, whatever your philosophy is, it'll come through. Don't start off with whether this is true for environmentalist whack jobs or for evangelical Christians. If you start with the message and then try to make it entertaining, it'll suck. If you start with entertainment, and then the message will come out because your philosophy comes out. Why is Saturday Night Live liberal? It's not liberal because the liberal cabal meets at George Soros' house and says, "What will we liberal today?"
Yes,
it's
is.
No, it's not. It's liberal because they have 15 writers and they're all liberals.
Yeah, right.
If you found 15 funny, if you could theoretically find 15 funny conservatives, and they wrote the show, it would be just as funny, and it would have a totally different attitude.
That's Tim Allen.
Yeah, there you go. So great one.
But there's got to be another one.
I don't think so.
I'm not sure.
They're not actually funny. Gaffigan is kind of a subversive. I don't know if he's a conservative because his attitude is.
Dennis Miller.
Interesting.
Frasier.
Miller.
Frasier.
Kelsey Grammer.
Kelsey Grammer.
But he's not a comedian though. He's just an actor.
Yeah.
He's just an actor. He's not like me. I create
funny in
art.
chairs.
I craft, man.
All right, so you go to college.
Go to college.
Well, first of
Oral
all,
Roberts.
about the performing in school,
Right.
in church with the instrument, the trombone and things. Where you never had any stage fright. You're always a ham.
Yeah, I was a ham. That was never an issue. My mom was a ham, and my grandfather, Ray Futrell, who was kind of my hero when I was a kid. He served in World War II and just this amazing guy. Went from being he literally lived on the streets of Tulsa stealing food to eat.
Oh, wow.
A couple years before World War II, to becoming the head of the Airline Mechanics Union when he was at United Airlines. I mean, just an amazing transformation. So, but he was kind of a ham, and once again, something I learned from my grandparents. Vegas, when it was first Vegas, wasn't Vegas. When it first started, it was they were like begging for people to come, and they're trying to get. So my grandfather he was in the union. He, for him, money, like having any money was having money because they'd never had any. So they would scrape together. So every few months, he and my grandmother would go to Vegas back when Sammy and everybody was there.
Fantastic.
And my grandmother, smoking hot. She is 90 years old. And I'm not making this up. She still has guys hitting on her. I'm not kidding. My mom is mad because she'll go they picked her up at the airport, and there's this 70-year-old guy hitting on my 90-year-old grandmother. Would you leave her alone? She's been chasing off guys like you her whole life. So because she was smoking hot, they got invited front table. So
I'm sure. Plus your dad's and your grandfather's in organized labor. Bugsy Siegel the place.
So she's at the front row, like the Ink Spots, the Mills Brothers, all these groups.
Wow.
So they would hang out. So he was kind of into showbiz.
Yes.
And so they always sang. If you ever got together on my mom's side of the family, they were all people. Someone would start singing songs. You'd all do these sing around. My dad's side, the redneck Southern, that would never happen. And so when I was a little kid, they would make me sing how much is that doggy in the window and other little goofy songs. So I just grew up. It was just expected that you would perform, and so it's no problem.
So you go to college, and did you want to go to college?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was just assumed I was going to go to college. I wanted to go. I was academically interested.
Where is Oral Roberts?
It's in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Okay.
A slut, spelled backwards, by the way, just so you know that. And I was pitched that it was the Harvard of evangelicalism, and it was in fact the Over the Road Trucking Institute of.
Right.
It was terrible, but it was whatever.
So you spent 4 years there.
4 years there, and so while I was there, I started doing open mic night stand up stuff.
Oh.
And
why were you a funny guy growing up?
I don't know. I guess.
I
think he's pretty funny.
Had something happen, and then
let me rephrase that.
Exactly.
Did you tell a lot of jokes?
Yes.
Did you attempt to be humorous?
So I memorized Steve Martin's albums. I memorized Bill Cosby's albums, and that was my once again my grandfather. He'd seen these comics, live and in person. He knew Don Rickles. He was a Don Rickles target once.
God.
It's like one of his proud moments in life was Don Rickles just unlooded on him at a gig.
That would be
fantastic.
such an honor.
Great?
Yeah,
it was
indeed.
And so I'd memorized these whole albums and everything. But if you had said to me, two things. If you'd woken me up in my little crappy bedroom in Peoria, South Carolina, population 211, including livestock, which explains my dating patterns, by the way. If you had woken me up and said, what do you want to do if you could do anything? I would have said, I want to be a comedian. If you'd asked me when I was awake, I would have never said it because it was... You can't do that. You know what I mean? These people, they're from some alien place. There's normal people,
right?
And then there's this weird group of aliens.
Yeah.
So it never dawned on me that it could be my job.
Well, you wanted more. I mean, that's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
You always knew too.
That's why. I wanted to do something else. I didn't know what the more or less. I just knew what these people are doing. I don't want this.
Something else.
I want. I left. The only question when I left South Carolina was who was happier, me or everyone else. That was the only question.
Right.
So I'm doing stand up. Some friends goaded me into trying.
Were there pressure? Friends goaded you, but were there pressures from your parents? And certainly Oral Roberts doesn't
they
crank
did
out
not.
comedians.
Yeah, they didn't know what I was doing. They didn't know that I was.
They
doing
were probably
this.
happier that you were in the rental car business.
Well,
that was a good, honest living.
So the way it happened is while I was in college, I was doing this open mic night stuff. And while I was in college, and by the way, I wasn't even supposed to be there. It was a club. I could get kicked out of college. Oral Roberts would kick you out. No joke. They didn't just kick you out if you got caught drinking on campus. They kicked you out if you got drinking off campus.
Oh, yeah.
So I developed a strategy. There were a couple restaurants that also had bars, and I would buy a Long Island iced tea and have it in a big plastic tea tumbler, the kind of granny ones, the brown, opaque.
Yeah.
And that way, when they sent out the little, Nazi Youth for Christ to see if they could find you, I could sit there and see, hi, everything's fine, yes. Well, the problem is because my parents didn't drink, and my friends, all we knew was, buy cheap beer and drink it out of the back of my friend Bill Wetzel's car.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know anything about alcohol. So I didn't know what a Long Island tea was. I just knew that it was easy to drink, nice and sweet, and it looked like. So later, when I start doing stand-up, they give you booze for free.
Yeah.
So they went, what do you want? Well, I want a Long Island iced tea.
Yeah.
I was drinking 3 a night and then couldn't figure out why I was waking up the next day with my head the size of an orca. Why do I feel so bad? I'm getting sick.
Your act got very blue towards the end of the evening.
And then finally, so explain to me, dude, do you have any idea how much alcohol you're drinking? He said, you're drinking 15 shots a night.
Jeez.
What? What? I am? What? So my point is that the comedy was happening as a amateur thing. And then they start, so open mic night, the club owner comes to me and says, you're not the worst guy here. How about if you MC the open mic night?
Right.
We'll give you $25. Well, when you're in college, that 20. Wow, hey,
it's a
$25.
lot of Long Island iced teas
Exactly.
elsewhere. So anyway, when you get up there and you first construct a joke, you get up there and just F around, or you construct a joke that you think is funny, practice it, get up there, and then just wait for feedback.
So when I first started, I had topics like I thought this was funny, and what really caused my shame spiral down into my career was the first night it went well. And who knows why? It could have been the crowd, me, whatever. But the first night it went well.
Yep.
So a week later I come back and I have an act. I wrote an act.
Your
It was a character. It was a character.
Song and dance.
No.
And
there was this guy who I worked with one summer in high school. It was this classic South Carolina rural black guy who was one of the smartest guys I've ever met, but he talked in that really country kind of way, and he would say the funniest things that would just make. So I wanted to introduce him, so I did a fake black accent. Yeah, it was awful at every level. Yeah. And so I thought I would never do it again. I mean, it was horrible.
So you bombed the second time.
So
I've heard.
I didn't bomb. Bomb is too kind. I mean, I was bomb.
Yeah.
I mean, Nagasaki would be more in the
from the best show to the worst show.
Yeah.
So I've heard comedians say that's a dangerous thing, having a good first show, because it's not real.
Exactly. So then, some weeks go by, and then I shamed myself into going back. I'm like, come on, dude.
So when you
can't let this be the last time. So I was really thinking, I'll go one more time, and I will just have wash this memory away, and then that'll be that.
Right.
But it went okay. It wasn't as good, but it was enough for me to come back. And I started, because I'm hanging out open mic nights. The comedy boom was just was getting going, and so I was seeing these comics who would later go on to be Jeff Foxworthy and stuff. And I was seeing them do and I started going, oh, okay, so you do that, because literally all I knew was what I saw on TV. I mean, I had no background, no nothing.
Right, that's great.
And so then I started figuring out, and I figured out what I wanted to do. I wanted to do Bill Cosby stories, but with these kind of Steve Martin crazy oddball attitude. And so that's what I did. I took real stories from my life and I dressed them up.
So do you get that endorphin rush when people laughed, or is it fake?
I can't explain it.
I've heard comics say that one of the shill ways to do it is they'll find a table of idiots who laugh at anything, and that's a dead end to go down. But some comics live there at the laughing drunk table.
And the comics who, hey, what's your name? What do you do for a living? I mean, it's the reason why Howie Mandel's name is taken in vain by so many actual comics. They hate him because it's not, dude. That's not. You're just standing. If Howie Mandel's funny if the crowd is funny. Give him a crowd full of people who have interesting jobs and fun backgrounds, he's fine. Give him a crowd full of accountants, and he's doomed.
I never really listened.
So that's not my thing. But I mean, as you know, Shattuck, I'm the ultimate egomaniac. It's all about me. How did I feel about it? You know what I'm saying? So I would craft bits that I liked, and if they got any response at all, I go, yes, look. And
so were you very physical? I assume you couldn't help.
I started off.
You weren't Stephen Wright.
I started off once I started doing it more seriously, like when they had me emceeing the open mic gig or whatever. I played different instruments. I was a guitar act at first.
Oh no,
really?
Yeah, and a couple of song parodies and that kind of thing.
Jesus, you're an Adam Sandler type.
But what I figured out, one of the things I learned from watching people is that in the first couple minutes, if you can pump the room full of energy, you can feed off that energy. And so I had this parody, Thank God I'm a Country Boy kind of thing. Thank God I'm a Carolina Boy. And it's about being South Carolina and all this cousin screwing jokes and blah, blah, blah. And it was short. It wasn't a big, long thing. You know, it's just like 2 courses and boom, and we're gone. But it would get people jazzed and to get them up. And then I would, you know, do my spiel and introduce myself and tell my life stories, and I'd throw in it. So the songs were like the battery charger for a relatively weak act. And the reason why, I mean, I'm very uncomfortable talking about it because I don't know. The deal is I worked full time for 6 years doing nothing but stand-up. I did not have a day job, and I worked the circuit, 41 states.
Incredible.
I paid my bills.
A tiny minority of people who do any comedy do that.
And I saw that on the one hand, I was a success. On the other hand, I was never really very good. I mean, it was okay. You know what I'm saying? I was okay. And the reason I wasn't very good, I learned at the end, was I wasn't willing to do the hard work of honing an act because I didn't want to be a comedian. I thought I wanted to be a comedian. Right. I wanted to make people laugh talking about stuff. Which is not the same thing. You know, Jerry Seinfeld's act crafted down. I would work with these comics who just, I'm like they would go every line like, I'm going to change whatever up to upward. I'm like, what? This is like a big deal. I'm like, dude, I just go up there and screw, and that's your problem.
Well, so organic, like improv.
Yeah, exactly. I would go up. For example, I remember one time I was in Topeka, Kansas, and there was a front page story about how the lieutenant governor had been caught in some kind of scandal or something, and so like 2 lines, you know, there were obvious jokes. So I'm sitting at a diner waiting to go to the club. I see the thing. I write, so I write 2 lines, boom, boom, boom. I go up, do the lines. Nobody in the room knows as much about what's happening in their government as I do. The problem is they don't follow politics. And so here's this guy from nowhere who's doing like the one guy came up to me afterwards and said, man, that joke was hilarious. I work on some campaign, whatever. I'm going to steal that. But the rest of the crowd was cool. That was me. I'm reading the papers. I'm watching the news because I was always interested in what's going on.
The local.
And I'm doing, it was a cocktail party for me.
Yeah.
Right. If you're at a cocktail party, hey, did you see what happened today? Oh man, do you believe what Trump's up to? You know, that was my thing. So every week I'm writing more material, which was idiotic. I should have spent time crafting the mountain of material. Yeah. I had a mediocre 45 instead of a type 15. That's what I had. Yeah.
So when you were a road comic, so you were driving all over the country.
Absolutely driving, flying.
Well, that sounds like an absolute dream.
Fantastic way to spend your 20s. I got to tell you.
Yeah, absolutely.
In rooms full of alcohol infused females who just watch you stand up in front of a group of people and get laughed at. Of course, they laughed at you for very different reasons later in the evening.
Well, there must be a certain good feeling to hold. I mean, you can talk about women too, beautiful women in the audience.
Absolutely.
That walking down the street have no interest
in
Michael
me
Graham.
At all. I'm the last guy they look at, and then all of a sudden it's, you're the comedian guy.
And they're floating on every word.
Yes. I don't know about that, but it was a good thing. Like you said, good way to spend your 20s, and lots of alcohol and lots of great people. And I got to work with Jerry Seinfeld and Robin Williams and Jeff Foxworthy and Brett Butler.
Who are the best people of them all that you remember?
I mean, once you get to a certain level, they're so freaking funny. You know what I mean? So the people who think are funny. So let's skip them.
Right.
Let's talk about people
I want to know who was a dick and who was cool.
Okay, Brett Butler was psychotic out of her mind.
Yeah.
We worked together at a club in San Antonio? El Paso, that's it. And so this is how the industry worked. These chains, like the Punchline, they realized that one of their key expenses was housing because they'd have 3 comics coming in from elsewhere, blah, blah. So they would buy condos or they would buy houses and they'd have a maid service. And so you'd stay there for a week and then the maid service would come in and clean it all up, new sheets, whatever, for the next crew.
Oh, wow. That's
so it was a lot cheap. Well, except for you're now living in a condo with 2 total strangers, like week-long roommates. And sometimes it was great. What's his name from the Batman, Michael Keaton Batman movies, the comedian. He had an HBO show too.
HBO show.
He played the reporter in the Michael Keaton Batman.
Robert. His guy is he in Bull Durham too? The fat guy.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know.
Who was the assistant coach?
And why can't we think? He's so famous we can't think of his name.
Yeah.
Can you edit this in later?
Yeah, I will.
Okay.
I will.
I spent a week. I spent a week living with Robert Wall.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, in Atlanta, Georgia, and it was and I like to cook, as Shattuck will tell you. And so that's another way I got gigs. Is I would cook on the road and make gumbo and jambalaya, and then people would say, "You got to book Graham."
Oh yeah,
I want Graham to open for me. I've already got an opener. Okay, make him the feature. We want Graham.
Everything but talent strategy.
Exactly right. What, my jokes? Are you kidding
drives,
me?
He cooks.
Exactly.
He'll drink with us.
Exactly. Foot rubs and massages, and so I spent a week with him. It was a blast. He was just like the sweetest guy, nicest guy. You know what he did all day? He worked on his act.
Really?
Exactly. And I was out like going to see movies and screwing around and whatever.
But that's getting material too doing that.
It was good.
Yeah.
It was good. It was good. So what
I've
was
heard
the
a
point?
lot of people say a lot of comics steal from each other. Did you ever?
Yeah,
were you
yeah,
ever tempted?
absolutely. No. People stole from me.
Really?
No, absolutely. Because I
'Cause
was
and then they could probably.
because I was a content thrower. I
Yeah,
mean, I
yeah.
just
Yeah.
not nonstop. Yeah, because that's what's the point. I wouldn't steal because I was having too much fun. I had stuff I wanted to say.
Yeah,
You
right.
know, that
In
was
the-
my thing. Even
in
if
the
it wasn't funny,
cocktail
I just wanted to say.
environment,
I had
cocktail
this,
party environment, yeah.
I had this bit that people hated that I just loved about abortion and about how abortion. Exactly. I said, abortion is a
Your
weird.
instincts are strong, I'd say.
Abortion is the weirdest thing because in every other part of life, we always say if you're not sure if somebody's alive, you better go rescue. Like if there's a cave and there's like a crash, or a mine and the mine collapses, and you're standing outside going, it's been 24 hours. I don't know. Do you think they're still alive? No, I don't know. I don't either.
Yeah.
Well, let's go home. Okay, bye. You never do that. It's always, if there's any doubt,
Yeah.
but if it's a kid still inside the mom, what do you think? Is it alive? I'm not sure. Oh, well, whatever. Bye.
How would that work
No.
at the,
So the kid's like, think about it. The kid, but when you get to the 12th week, you're talking about, brain function, eyes, they're moving.
How is this a
they're
comedy
making
bit?
noise.
I know this is-
Well, you're asking for trouble in the Laugh
but what-
Factory in San
but
Francisco.
think about the poor
Which is
kid.
right next to Planned Parenthood.
Think about the poor kid in there. He's pumping blood. He's thinking. He's moving
Yeah.
around. He's like, what do I got to do? Like freaking tap dance? What do you want? 5 minutes on airplane
my
food?
darling. Hello.
Don't kill me.
Jesus, your
Don't kill me. What do you say?
gumbo
Hey.
must have been really good. Jesus.
I can do Shakespeare. I'm
That
telling
seems
you.
like poison in an act, by the way.
it
to
was.
be
Could
doing-
And I loved it.
Your abortion would have been killed. It was.
Did anyone ever walk out while you said that bit?
Not that bit. I did have people walk out.
Oh, did you?
Oh my God. Of course I did.
You must
And,
develop a thick skin, obviously. With
you
doing
cannot
that.
do
that
stand-up
is a-
comedy if you are not prepared for failure. So
But how is that? I mean, that's just one thing to do stand-up what I'm getting from you, by the way, is that you were less stand-up than more open mic. It was about having a mic and getting to talk to people.
aha, you have to listen to me now.
No, I get the feeling if you worked at
Active audience.
Caldor and knew how to use the PA, that people would be getting a show whether they liked it or not.
This is how I can prove that you're absolutely correct. So when I was in college,
Walmart
one of
instead
the
of
big restaurants in Tulsa was a place called Molly Murphy's House of Fine Repute. It was a thing called a character restaurant, which for a while was like this big thing. And once again, I didn't know what they were.
Right.
But a friend of mine worked there, and they were making like, and once again, this is back in the day, $125, $150 a night in tips. So I said, I want a gig there. So I go in, and what they did is that they had people dressed as characters. There was like Ahab the Arab, and he had like an Arab suit, and he had a whole shtick, and they had Dr. Love, the Love Doctor, whatever. Everyone had like a little character they would do. And so the menu was very limited, like pretty much had steaks, potatoes, very limited. And then they would insult you. That was the whole thing. You went there for the abuse.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so people would bring like bachelor parties or birthday, that was the point. And so so they had this character that someone had quit and they needed someone fill, Diaper Man.
You mean from the Mickey Mouse series?
I
or
don't know,
whatever?
just
Mighty
Diaper Man.
Mouse.
Mighty
Yeah,
Mouse. Mighty
yeah.
Mouse.
Diaper
That's it.
Man.
That's great.
And so I wore a diaper
Oh,
for a
Jesus.
living in college.
Oh, wow.
That's great.
I wore blue tights and a shirt and a baby bib.
Yep.
We
And a
need
baby
to-
hat and a diaper.
We need a picture of
No,
that.
the
too.
best moment was they had a thing where you couldn't work. There was some piece of paperwork or something, and they kept telling us to bring it in, and as Shattuck will tell you, that's not my strong suit. And I was already, you had to draw, the rules were you came to work, you dressed in the locker room. You couldn't wear your costume to and from work.
Yeah, especially that one.
So I was in costume, and they said, you have to have this in my apartment or whatever. It was 5 minutes away. I got in the car in costume, pull out. There's a cop who happens to be sitting right there, just sees me, pulls me over. That's the whole. We're on the side of whatever the interstate is to downtown Tulsa. The wind is just whipping my little cape back. I'm in blue tights, and he's just looking at me, man. What are you doing, man?
Is he going to Cape
It was a
Canaveral?
lot. Of course, I didn't have my wallet. Of course not. Where are you going to put it in a diaper? So I did stand up at those tables
Wow.
every night.
What do you mean? So you go up to a table and you just start shooting?
But they knew. But once
You're
they
already
go
in a
there,
diaper. Yeah.
That's true.
people go there for. It's like in Chicago had somewhere that like was like a 1920s thing.
Yeah,
and they
that
would
one's
insult you.
called,
This was a thing for a while.
Yeah.
And so I just did my little shtick, I am Diaper Man, defender of tall, protector of small, and and I would fly through the thing. And it was, I was great with two groups of people, kids because it was just dumb, and then people who wanted to perv out because I had all kinds of double entendres, which is pretty much my radio career. Kids and people want to perv out. Yeah.
So
that's great.
So that's another part of that is knowing that getting up there, doing stand-up, doing talk radio and all that stuff, knowing that people, especially with talk radio, and if your stand-up abortion bit, didn't hurt enough. So there are people who constantly, hundreds, thousands, who hate you, who are saying MF. You can see it and you know that you're polarizing.
Yeah. There's another word for that. It's called my high school experience.
Well,
so
okay.
It's very comfortable.
Imagine if you did your abortion bit with the diaper.
Exactly.
Well, high school isn't voluntary though. So you put yourself into these positions where you know at any time. Why is that? Is because you don't care that people hate you, or that you like that some people hate you?
Yes.
So I would say that's true of both of you guys.
I don't know what it is. I mean, I like people. I like hanging out with people. I'm not the guy who goes in the room, screw all you people. But at the same time, if someone does, I just don't. Conflict doesn't bug me at all. And I think because of the environment that I was in growing up, my premise, something inside me, the genetic level says, if everyone thinks that what you're doing is bad, it's probably good. Because the people I grew up with, that was the case. When they disagreed with me, I was probably on the right path.
So that's interesting. I'll give you an example of this. Is that a few years ago, Michael and I were down in Southie, and we were at Moles. We ate or something.
Moles, yes, love Moles.
And somebody is in front of this Whitey Bulger dive bar is where you were parked, and somebody had double parked in front of him, and this is a really divey bar, and so. Graham, somebody's parked in front of me here. I got to go in. And I said, wait a second. You don't just walk in like be an a-hole in this neighborhood. Don't just go there and say whatever. And he didn't care. He just simply, if people don't know,
that's one way of doing
Boston is, there's still there. Well, at least until a few years ago, there were these tough old Irish bars.
Yeah. They've all been chased out now.
You get the wrong people, and you can end up under the Mystic River.
Exactly.
Or something.
So I'm like, I told him to be careful, but he just didn't care. He goes bounds in there. Some guy, Donnie McGonigal, walks out and does his thing and moves the car, and it's all just fine. If I had gone in there, people would have known that I have this sensibility and would have picked up on it. He walked in there, and they just assumed that he must be somebody or crazy because he has no fear.
Just as respectful as the other option, absolutely.
Something else about the way my life has turned out that is significant that I never thought was significant until recently is my size. I've always been a bigger guy. I was fat as a kid. I was not chubby. I was not big. As my Grandma used to say, he's a healthy boy. No, Grandma, I was a fat lard. Yeah. I was 145 pounds in the 4th grade.
Wow.
Yeah, I was so fat that the Pee Wee football team could not put me on my team. I had to be on the other team.
Oh, really?
Because if I fell on a kid, I could kill him. I was fat.
Oh, wow.
And I weighed 165 pounds in 6th grade. But interestingly, I weighed about the same when I was a sophomore because I kind of leveled out and I changed my diet. Blah blah blah. My point is, I was fat and I was always tall. I mean, I'm 6'3", 6'4", whatever. And so I think that's one reason why I was able to get this impervious thing. And it never dawned on me until someone told me once, a former boss of ours, whose name I shall not mention, but her initials are Grace Blazer, told, you don't know how intimidating you are. You walk in a room and you just intimidate people. I'm like, me intimidating? Because I don't, when however big you are, you just, what I'm saying, this is just how big, you don't think about it.
Yeah.
But I think that's one reason why I kind of was able to get away with the stuff I did. If I'd had more butt kickings in Pelion, I think I would have turned out a little different.
Well, were the kids bastards to you?
They're totally bastards to me, but they weren't willing to beat me up, usually, only a couple of them, because I was so big. They were afraid that I might land a lucky punch or something. Right. You get all that fat behind it, you can hurt somebody.
So were you? You're also very tall. You're almost you're right at the cusp of being too tall.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not too tall.
No.
One more inch and you're silly.
I'm at that height where it's unusual for me to be around people who are taller than me.
Right.
But there are people who are taller than me, and when I am with them, I feel how everyone else feels around me. Right.
But
why are you bigger than me? This is wrong.
Did you find it? And I have other tall friends. Did you find that people like would brush up against you in bars and things? Like with a tall guy, even.
Okay, when you talk as much as I do, you never get to. Did you do that because I'm tall? all. You usually
No, I
get to
understand
the.
that,
You
but
do that
you
because
find
I'm a
people have
jerk.
people wanted to
Oh yeah,
start
no,
with
no,
you
no,
just-
absolutely.
just
What's up, guys?
because.
No, absolutely, absolutely. You run into that, guys presenting their presence. And because my thing is not physical, my thing is all verbal.
Yeah.
I'm totally cool with that. It's just like women. There's no way I could ever have attracted a. I'm trying to keep. I don't know what the language level here is.
You can say whatever.
But I wouldn't. Put me in a dance club with loud music. I'm nothing. I got nowhere to go. No woman is going to look at me and go, "Yeah, that's the man."
That's
I've been
where-
looking
yeah.
for. Yeah.
I think
But
we're there with you. Yeah.
But you could get me to a place where it's quiet and I can ply her with alcohol and talk.
Yes.
That's when I can sometimes push people over that line of stupid, where stupid can take over.
Yes.
How would you do in prison, you think?
And in prison, every nickname they had for me would be followed by the bitch. That's how I'd be in prison. Although I have spent time behind those cold hard bars. As
Yeah, he
Shattuck
did
will
get,
tell you, I
pulled
did.
for a
I have
license.
spent time in the correctional system. Yes, I have, and victim of injustice.
So let me get to that. That's
Okay.
that's interesting. So we've talked about you have to have a thick skin, and you're in a business
Right.
where a lot of people hate you. So
Exactly.
it happens. If
Whatever.
you're going to go out there and say something that happens, right? So what about when you're actually in trouble and it's looking big? Like the getting arrested thing, if people don't know, it was for an expired license. It was a nothing thing. It was BS. So that wasn't anything. But, I mean, you've been fired on a national level. You've been in big controversies where the news cycle that day is you. Wow. And
Okay.
there's some horrible...
I have two stories
Yeah.
about that. When I was doing stand-up, I used to do this bit about kind of rednecky biker kind of stuff, and make fun of, because it's my people. And so I would, do this,
Right.
this extended bit about it. And I went into the bathroom while the headliner was up, and this guy followed me in to the bathroom and pulled a knife on me.
Jeez.
And I should have.
Where had you
No, I
pissed yet?
was still holding my weapon, which was apparently it's retractable. It was like the anti-switchblade. It got smaller when you push the button.
Right.
And
Is it a
this
pump
guy
action?
is, and he is. I mean, it was like a scene out of a movie. I mean, he
Right.
had the leather vest,
Right.
he had the ZZ Top beard. And then I didn't appreciate what you had to say about bikers.
Oh.
And what I should have done is I should have panicked. What I should have done is
Yeah.
I should have begged. I should have fallen to
Right.
his knees, whatever.
Right.
But something in me just did. It took umbrage.
Yeah.
And so I started doing this bit about, the best thing about bikers, you guys can all take a joke. I love hanging out with you bikers. You mess with me, I mess with you. Blah, blah. And I talked and I talked and
Right.
I confused and I dazzled and I got out of there.
Wow.
Another story related to
Who,
this.
by the way, goes in to pursue the comic with his
know.
knife?
I had
and
knives
doesn't get
twice.
a stabbing real
Twice.
quickly.
Twice I had knives pulled on me.
What do you, is that the etiquette? You're allowed a reprieve if your oratory is good
I don't
enough?
know. I don't just. I have to
You've got
talk
2
to the
minutes
bikers
before he
union.
starts
I don't.
stabbing. Make it good.
I don't know. I don't know.
And what's the other one?
I had a shotgun pulled on me one time I was doing stand-up
Jeez.
comedy and I was driving. And it's a long story. I don't want to sidetrack, but the point is when the guy was
well,
pointing.
hold on. I think this is. I mean,
Okay, so it's a long. I had a car. I was on basically going from New York to Washington State and back on this big tour. I was going to spend like 4 months on the road, make a ton of money, take it back to New York, and then be able to spend a few months in New York doing the comic strip and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
I buy this used car that was absolutely perfect, paid cash for it, and 3 days after I buy it, someone sideswipes me and basically totals the car. Well, you know how it is. Takes them a while to get the check and blah, blah. So I get this big check, and my car still runs, even though it has
Yeah,
a scrape on it.
perfect.
So I just keep driving. So I never got plates for it because it was going to be totaled, so I had the temporary plates, and I'm driving cross country. I'm not going to be back in New York.
Yeah.
I'd literally have to drive all the way back. Whatever. So I'm driving without plates.
right.
Never an issue. I pull in to get gas in Umatilla, Oregon, in this little redneck place in the middle of the woods. And I use my gold card, and the guy doesn't want to give me the gas because I don't have no, I want to use my Texaco card. The guy doesn't want to give me gas because you have got expired tags. He goes, I can't take this. And I've used this card like 50 times. And this is months later. Like, you can't take this card. You ain't got no tags. Well, dude, I don't know what to tell you. I said, dude, just take the damn card. This is what I have. And I had no
Right.
cash because I was trying to get to the next gig. I was living off cards. I was going to work that night, get cash that night. And he's just screaming and screaming and screaming. And I'm like, whatever, dude.
What does it matter to him?
So I slam the door, get in the car, and I'm sitting there waiting for him. He comes out with a holster stock, silver finish, pump action 12 gauge shotgun.
Right.
Pumps a shell into the thing and starts waving it in front of my car.
Come on.
My reaction
That is not good customer
My
service.
reaction is to whip out my Visa and say, will you take a gold card then?
No.
Jesus.
So then a bunch of stuff happens like it either. My point is, I should react to these things differently, and I don't. Which brings me to when I got fired in D.C. It was the London terrorist attacks on 7/7 happened, and then 2 weeks later there was another one. And a bunch of data came out around that time about the support inside the Muslim community for violence, and the polls showing that, in other countries that the support for violence was a majority. And a poll from London, from British Muslims, said that a quarter of British Muslims, if they knew about a terrorist attack, would not tell anybody. And there were some other facts and data at the time. So I wrote a column, and because I was writing for Jewish World Review at the time, and I did a bit on my show about how if any other organization said, well, we're not for terrorism, but we do have terrorist members, and we're not going to kick them out. And when they say that our book inspires a terrorism, we're not going to say that they're wrong. Oh, and by the way, millions of our members support the terrorists. If any other, like if that was the Boy Scouts, and 1/10 of the Boy Scout troops were using their knot tying skills to just throttle Jews to death, and saying that the Boy Scout manual said it was okay, we would not say the Boy Scouts are okay, but they have a problem. We would say, no, the Boy Scouts are a terrorist organization. As currently constructed, Islam is a terrorist organization for these reasons. The good news is that it's fixable, that all you have to do is, do X, Y, and Z, because the majority of Muslims aren't terrorists.
Well, needless to say, that's all it took, though.
Yeah. So we had this fantastic week of radio. The head of CARE, the Council of Council of American Islamic Relations, came on. It was fantastic. People responded to the argument. We talked about, blah, 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 blah. And then, there were protests, and the station management came to me and said, we are absolutely not going to fire you. This is fantastic. We are getting fantastic input. The phones are ringing off the hook, blah, blah, blah. And then the next day they fired me.
Right.
And not only did they fire me, but because they were owned by ABC, they wanted to smear me as a bigot and racist, that we fired him because he was a bigot and racist.
Wow.
So I saw that this was my whole future in talk radio. I mean, I could be the guy who was the racist guy. So because I had run political campaigns for a living before this, and because of whatever this thing is, and I didn't crawl into the bed and cry, I said, okay, mother bleepers. Yeah. Here we go. They fired, they're so classic. They fired me via delivery, like a person.
Yeah,
I've never had that. Yeah, exactly. I was like a guy. I've never had a delivery guy. So the guy comes over with Michael Graham, I have some ID, and then he has this packet. He has a handcuff thing on his chain. So they fired me 6:00 on a Friday because they're thinking,
of course,
we got it. And then they spread the Michael Graham fired for his racist, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Monday morning when they show up for work, all over America, every fax machine, email, whatever, of all the PR people I knew in every newsroom had my statement, my press release, my thing. For 1 week, I was the #1 talk topic in the United States. I was on every network. I was on every show, whatever, because I worked it. If I hadn't worked, and so not that at the end everyone agreed with me or disagreed, whatever, but what they got was, no, he's not a racist. He made an argument that's offensive or provocative, or maybe he was a jerk about it, but it was clear I was not saying all Muslims are terrorists. I never said that. You're not saying that Islam, you have to be a terrorist.
And I remember that week, and there was a time when the dark cloud was right over you. Yeah. And many people were saying that you're labeled right there.
You're done. Your
racist,
career's done. You'll never do anything. Nothing.
Islamophobic. All this stuff. You're right. Career's done. You're on the conveyor belt to the next thing, which is you go away forever. And there's a lesson learned, and they put the satellite sisters in your place or something like that. So at some point, could you feel how big it was? Were you ever seeing how big it was?
No, I didn't see how big it was. All I was trying to do was save my own life. But it just took off because every talk show host, and this was 2005.
Right.
Every
so
talk show host
intimidated by this whole storm.
No, well, look, I mean, was I intimidated? I was scared. I was scared that it was going to break, but I didn't freeze. I didn't beg for mercy. I didn't go out and say something utterly insincere. I stood by what I said. I explained why I said it. I made my arguments, and I would not let people off the hook when they tried to dismiss it as racism. I would push back. And if you project
there was never
10 years,
and if I offended anybody,
nothing. Right. And if you project 10 years, you can see how Trump has used that to his effect. Now, I think it's a little different because Trump actually does say and do things that are in fact offensive and disgusting.
He does.
But the point is to keep fighting. Right. And as a result, I ended up getting 5 job offers, all of which paid better than my previous gig. And that's how I ended up at WTKK right here.
Kidding.
To take Jay Severn's place.
So how much of that, the fact that, do you think there was ever a time in your life when you wouldn't have cared about this big ominous thing? I mean, sometimes the energy, I've never been hit by it like that,
Right.
but sometimes you see where they're starting to look at you, and starting to say, can we blow this guy up?
If for people who listen to my show or read my stuff, they know that I have this kind of fundamental bleep you, mind your own damn business kind of, who the hell do you think you are? That's just, it's not something that you cultivate. It's not something that you create. I don't think. It's just how I am. My mom was this relatively mouthy Los Angeles girl in Redneckville, South Carolina. And we would have customer service issues because, the philosophy down there is, it's all good. Yeah. It's all good. Hey,
it isn't.
You cut off my power by mistake and I have no power. It's all good. No, it's not all good. In fact, it sucks. That's why I'm calling you. And so I watched her do that. I remember this one time I had this issue with the phone company and my evangelical mom would never swear, but man, she was using normal words in ways that I think she just said F, and that really had an impression on me that she was, no, this is the way it's going to be. I'm going to, I don't know who you
Stay
think you
course.
are, but I know who I am.
Yeah.
And
were you emboldened or made stronger by having kids? Since you had kids, probably really young at that time.
I'll tell you the impact of having kids on me is I was a raging a-hole until I had kids, and then they became a moderate.
You used to be?
That's what I'm saying. It took me from 11 down to like 7 or 6.
High up in the a-hole echelon.
Exactly.
Don't make that mistake.
It is amazing. I really do believe that one of the reasons why my talk career worked was because I had kids and it started affecting me. It started making me, okay, why do you want to be a jerk? You're going to be a jerk by accident anyway. Why are you pushing it? Why not just relax and just say what you got to say? And if it's jerky, it is, but you have nothing to prove, man. Yeah. And it took the edge off big time.
So I did notice that I mean, there's an easy way to go is that when, for instance, with program directors, and we certainly know this, we worked at the same radio station together, and is that you take your beating, you take your slap, you do your on-air
lay
apology,
on the ground,
whatever.
let her kick you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you essentially almost never did that. Never. And you would fight back. And as a matter of fact, speaking of Trumpian, really, you would use their strategy against them. In different ways that management tried to intimidate you personally, with some kind of a harassment. That there was I don't want to say what it was, but there was a time that you were suggesting that you also had stuff on that
right,
person.
Exactly.
Should our listener
Right.
just guess what that is?
No. Well, no, it was just I mean, you were absolutely on offense.
Yes.
And
absolutely.
I don't think. I mean, when you're supposed to just take your hit and go and be suspended, and then maybe be fired, or just take a crappier contract, etc. I mean, is this a? Because that can't always be healthy,
right?
Is this the raging reflex of F you that's coming back?
I think so, and it's also. I mean, you gotta sleep at night. I mean, that's another thing. Is I take myself so seriously, and everything I do is so profound that if I did something that was a violation of my code, I am really kind of in a way that guy. Like it has to be real for me. I have to mean what I'm doing, and so the times that I did craft statements on the air, they were always very specifically crafted so that I would not cross a line. And when I was pushed and told, remember the midget thing? Yeah, I would not. I made fun of midgets. Yeah. And
no,
I was told
didn't
that
actually. In truth, you
that's true.
didn't. Somebody else did.
Yeah, exactly.
But this is important. This is so people can see how it is. Somebody else in the studio said some offhanded remark about
and that was
midgets.
a jerk move.
Some idiot in the news marketplace in this marketplace complained and demanded he gets apologize, and he didn't apologize. He shouldn't have apologized, but most people would have because these gigs are hard to get.
And all was the point that was a part of it all was this great story. Starbucks in Texas, they were trying to be accommodating, and a midget wanted to work there, and they said, we're not sure that it's going to work, but we're open. We want to try. We want to try to make a try. Well, it turned out the guy was hardworking. Everyone, but he couldn't do it. He had to have a crate to move around to reach things, and other employees were tripping over it. Customers were waiting. The lines were getting longer, and so they just said to him, "Look." Once again, it's not about you. It is about physical reality.
Right.
It's just the way the world is shaped doesn't work. And he sued.
Yeah.
And I thought he was a total douchebag, and I called him out on it and said, you should, this is not bigotry at all. This is just reality. And so people got upset about it, and they were going to protest, which I was like, oh, please, God, please. I just want to see the scene of like 20 midgets outside the station, Well, you have to look to see, like, because you could pull up a van and you'd miss them, because, hey, somebody back there? So I wanted to see that scene, but alas,
at one point, was it also an issue of the word midget? Is that a term that is?
I'm sure
Short
that
people.
was. But
We
that
used
was
every-
the, that
we
was
used
the
every-
misdemeanor.
Yeah.
The joke was the
Yeah,
felony,
whatever.
certainly. It was such a good time to talk radio that one of the guys in the studio was a politician, and so he called me to ask if it was okay if he slammed us in the media. But of course, you were fine
that's
with
right.
it.
I was like, please do.
Yeah, I
Call
was
it.
like, that's fantastic. It was
I wish you would beat the crap out of
so
me.
funny. So we're gonna wrap up here in a second, but but along those lines, look, there are more and more people, especially with social media now and Twitter, more and more people who aren't conservatives, who are a lot of liberals now, are seeing this lack of free speech on campuses.
Sure.
And all of these gangs who have been trying to shut you down forever are turning on their own. So a lot of these liberals now, classical liberals, have had enough, and they're getting together and they're talking freely. And some of them, there's a comedian named Owen Benjamin, who's on Twitter. He was a mainstream guy, had some gigs on TV, etc., and then decided after they went after him because he railed against somebody giving transmorphic drugs to a 5-year-old, whatever. They went after him. The dark cloud came at him, and it was time to kill him. And he just had enough of it. And on Twitter, he went crazy. His agents fired him, but he didn't go crazy. He just became free. He uses any language he wants to now, and he's getting now gigs, not from where he ever used to, but now in a new place. So he says what he wants to. He uses any stuff, any word he wants to. He uses FAGGOT, which I'm afraid to say because I'm a puss. But like anything, and he's not a mean-spirited guy. He's just sick of having to follow rules.
Good.
I mean, now you've still got mainstream gigs.
Yeah.
And you've got bills to pay.
Yes,
and
I
I have
do.
bills to pay, etc. Can you see a time ever where you could just be totally free with what you can say?
You know what? It's interesting. That doesn't appeal to me because one of the things I learned when I was at Oral Roberts University and growing up where I grew up is when people give you boxes, those are just opportunities to show off how clever you are. It's like a magician doing the handcuff trick. You need the handcuffs to do the trick. I have no I had a program director who's actually got a clue. Not the one that we're thinking of because I don't want to say her name because it rhymes with Grace Blazer. She's never going to hear this. She's not going to be sober enough long enough to hear this. He told me one time, he says, "You are the dirtiest guy on the radio." I said, "What are you talking about? I never use it." He says, "That's what makes it worse."
Right.
You never say it. And so we imagine it and it's worse. But so I'm very comfortable. In other words, I communicate all the things I want to communicate. I do not feel restricted in my ability to communicate at all by those strictures. You give me the box and I will play inside the box and I will bounce off the edges of the box. And I like it much. It's like when the week I started my talk radio career was literally the week that Monica Lewinsky's story broke. Which is why I ended up in talk radios. I didn't have to be good. All you had to do was turn to the mic and say, "So Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky," and before you got to ski, the phones were full and people were yelling. Well, I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina, Billy Graham's hometown. And by the way, R.I.P. Billy Graham. And I'm not going to go on the air every night, particularly as a guy who's just starting in radio from South Carolina and say oral sex over and it's just not. Back then it was a deal. Today now, geez, whatever. But I was legitimately uncomfortable with it, and I knew instinctually my listeners are uncomfortable with it. So I said, here's what we got to do. We got to figure out a phrase that we can use to describe what Monica Lewinsky and Bill Clinton did that doesn't involve the word oral and that we can use. And so the callers were fantastic and we came up with all these great, my favorite was always FaceTime because everyone wanted FaceTime with the president and no one got as much of it as Monica, I'll tell you that. But the one we ended up using, we used it on the show for the whole time I was there, was hailing the little chief.
Yes.
So she was caught hailing the little chief and blah, blah, blah. And that was, hailing the little chief came from the box. We can't just say what we want to say. We can't just say BJ or whatever. So we went with that. And so I'm totally comfortable with that.
All right. So tell everybody all of your gigs now. You've got 4 different gigs.
Okay. So I bust tables at Shenanigans.
Still with the diaper.
Shenanigans.
Still with the
Shenanigans. I write for the Boston Herald, of course. And I also am a contributor for CBS News. They have a product called CBSN. It's their digital channel. If you haven't seen it, it is gorgeous. The quality is amazing.
It really is.
What they did is they made the decision a few years ago. They said, we're never going to catch up on cable. CNN, MSNBC, whatever. So we're going to go straight straight to the cord cutters. So they do a 24/7 cable network that's not on cable. It's on your phone, your platform, smart TV, whatever. Anywhere that you can see YouTube and whatever, you can watch it. Yeah. And they use their regular CBS people, and the quality, the tech is gorgeous.
And they've got the search engine wisely is CBS knows goes right to CBSN. Which is smart. And it's really good. And then you can, like, if you missed a story, you can click on it and watch the story when you want to watch it. So that's really cool. And then I also, what else do I do? You're on 2 shows in the UK. You're hated in the UK as well.
I do a weekly radio show in Great Britain for a station called Talk Radio. Yeah, I work for Rupert Murdoch bought the station.
Oh, no kidding.
And then I do a weekly hit on a radio show in Ireland that I've been doing for years. And I do, and that's the big stuff. I mean, I do a lot of writing
anything
and stuff.
in this business as long as it's not a desk job that's
if it pays. If you pay me, bar mitzvahs, weddings.
What did you
promise
him for this?
Well, I saw his phone just rang, and it's his wife.
My
and
lovely
I can see
bride
how
Buttercup.
Brady is now.
Exactly.
He's gonna run it. It's michaelgraham.com. I am Michael Graham on Twitter. Is that 2 I's?
I am M. Graham.
I am M. Graham. I should have did more reading. I should have did more reading.com. It's fine. Graham railroaded our intro and ruined it. But I certainly appreciate this. And this is, I mean, this can only be the beginning. It's way too much to talk about. Way too much to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's hang out again. Jay, did you have anything you actually wanted to say
Very
that Shattuck
fun.
didn't let you?
No, I enjoyed this. This is very nice. Nice
sure?
to talk to you more.
What are you hang out with Shattuck anyway?
You gotta go. I want to.
You're trying to save my marriage? I'm already doing. Look, once I told her I'm leaving, I'm going to see Shattuck. I was already the doghouse door open.
So the expectations.
I just got to go home and lay in it. So I'm in no anxious. It's going to be the same doghouse that ever.
Yeah,
so.
you go home now. She'll be surprised.
Yeah, there was my chance of getting lucky for the weekend shot. Thank you very much, Shattuck.
All right, everybody. See you later.
Hail to the little chief.